Welcome, everyone. Three, two, one. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert Hubbell from today's edition with another weekly live stream. I'm experimenting with the date. Last week, we moved it to a Friday and we had three times the normal people. And it looks like today we're about back to the usual number of attendees. So we'll see what's going on. And I should note, whenever I move the live stream, I get comments from people who say, "Oh, it overlaps with this or that." There are just too many events for me to try to triangulate where this goes. So let's get started. It was a good morning to start off with because of the Supreme Court decision striking down Trump's invocation of emergency powers under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. That has the effect of invalidating 80 or 90% of the tariffs that Trump unlawfully imposed over the last 6 to 8 months. A very good decision. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But before I do, I want to say that we are in a moment where we are accumulating victories. This is the most recent such victory, and it is a significant one because, finally a little bit of the Supreme Court stood up for the rule of law. That's encouraging. But it comes on the heels of the ongoing victory by the people of Minneapolis and Minnesota and their struggle against ICE. I say ongoing because it isn't over in Minneapolis or Minnesota, but the administration has blinked and it is backing down. Um, there is also, if you look just a little bit behind the headlines, we tend to forget the monumental victories on November 9th, 2025, when Democrats ran the board by, 15, 20, 25 percentage points in winning those elections. We are forgetting that each No King's Day demonstration, and the next one is on March 28th, that each is the largest single day political protest in American history, setting aside the Earth Day protests, which were a little bit different. So, we have seized the narrative. They're retrenching. They're on their back heels also on the Epstein files. And again, justice for the victims is always the objective there, but as a political matter, they are losing very, very badly there. So we have this accumulation of victories that should give us real confidence. But at the same time, I will say that Trump's threats against the midterms, 2026 midterms, have just unleashed this constant torrent of commentary on the liberal media that does nothing but repeat and repeat on loop all of Trump's threats without ever saying that we can do something about it. I watched MSNBC, Nicole Wallace. She did 2 blocks, 40 minutes of her opening show that did nothing but repeat everything that Trump is doing to threaten our elections. And for like 30 seconds at the end of each one of those 15-minute blocks, she said, "Yeah, and we can fight back." I mean, that is not a fair representation of what is happening. Even with respect to Trump's threats against the midterms, we're winning. I mean, you see that they are on their heels trying to figure out how they can do illegal things, like send ICE agents to the polls. But as I pointed out in today's newsletter, there's a federal statute that makes that a criminal offense for any military officer who orders troops, armed or unarmed, to the polls. You've seen the backlash against the unlawful seizure of the Fulton County ballots. This this gives us time and resources to plan our response to that. And so I would urge liberal commentators, somebody send this to Nicole Wallace and Chris Hayes and others and say, fine, raise the alarm. That's great. But give equal time to the fact that we have agency and we can stop it. Because if all we do is talk about the negative aspects and amplify what Trump's saying, it can make people feel bad. And boy, I will tell you, I am seeing that in my emails from readers. I mean, today, this morning, again, I'm getting comments asking me to rebut other pro democracy bloggers, God bless them all, who think that scaring the you know what out of all of you is an appropriate way to go. I just fundamentally disagree with that. And there are some new entrants on the scene who have lots of, great qualifications and they're former journalists or activists or whatever, but they think that reciting ad nauseum all of our challenges and everything that Trump is going to do is somehow helpful instead of telling you what you can do to fight back. We need to take control of the narrative because we are winning. We are winning, and you would not know that based on most of what we hear from the mainstream media. So, boy, I feel very good this morning. The Supreme Court decision should have been 9-0. Let's recognize that Thomas and Alito are complete lost causes, and just say Brett Kavanaugh has gone to the dark side. Or you know what? Maybe the man just is really, and I use this term advisedly, stupid. His I haven't had the chance to read all of the 7 opinions in the decision this morning, but something that Kavanaugh said was, "Oh my God, there are all of these sunk costs, all of these tariffs have been collected, and how are we going to unwind this? And we haven't told the administration how to fix this." Well, all that kind of thinking does is encourage Trump to engage in illegal activity and that get far enough down the path that we can throw up our hands and say, "Oh, it's just too hard." I mean, that's not even judicial reasoning. That's I don't know what even to call that. It's just not logical. He should not have been appointed to the Supreme Court. Maybe if we get a chance, we can impeach and remove him. But boy, is he a dim bulb. Um, the rationale for the Supreme Court was good for the following reason. One of the things that the court addressed is it said that the argument that the president can declare emergencies and that declaration is unreviewable is not constitutional. That works a fundamental rewriting of the U.S. Constitution, and um, the court said we're not going to do that. You have to operate within the parameters of the Constitution and the law, and what you do is reviewable. Very significant judicial reasoning. The other thing, and I think this was Roberts, again, I'm reading commentary, I haven't read the opinion directly. What Roberts said is, look, there are all sorts of things in our democracy that people, or our political system, that people want to fix or change, and the appropriate forum is Congress. It's not for the president to make law or to create emergencies, to create an artifice for making law. So that also, I think, recognizes that Congress has surrendered its authority to the president, and I'm hopeful that it augurs more opinions from the court that will say, "Hey, Congress, this is not for the president to do, but for you to do." So I think, to the extent that I have been able to analyze the opinion at all from secondary sources, there are good pro-democracy threads in the opinion that should make us all feel a little bit better. So those are my comments for today. I will now talk a little bit about the comments that I've gotten on the forum that I posted. And the first one was from people expressing frustration about 2 things. The first is, how do you find the live stream? I know it seems silly, but you open your app or you go to your desktop to my newsletter and it'll pop up. There's no link or portal or place that you have to be. That's the way Substack runs it. A number of people expressed frustration that I posted articles in yesterday's newsletter that I paid subscriptions for so I could give gift links. And then I guess after enough people looked at them, they shut down the gift links. So I think I'm going to go back and cancel my Financial Times subscription, which I just took out yesterday so I could give a gift link. And it did not let very many readers look at that. Look at that. So I apologize for that. I respect copyright rights. I try to operate within the parameters of the fair use doctrine. I don't use the archive function. Some of you know what that is, to circumvent paywalls. I don't do that. And I would ask readers not to do that in the comments. If someone chooses to paywall their stories, okay, then let's live with that and move on. I just won't cite those sources. So apologies for that diversion. I am still getting a lot of comments in the form that I opened up about the midterms. Somehow this story has penetrated the psyches of Americans and made people fear that despite the laws, that despite the restrictions, despite the practicalities, Trump is going to somehow go in and interfere with the midterms. If you feel that way, I posted an article yesterday and the day before by Nicholas Grossman from the Bulwark. I urge you to read that article. It's a very sober view of how difficult it is actually to interfere with elections. I won't repeat all of his arguments, but I've made many of those arguments previously. Um, I just, one thing I want you to know is I don't think this administration has the competency to interfere with the November midterms. One reason is there are something like 4,000 separate jurisdictions that run polling operations at something like 80,000 sites. I mean, it would be an incredible task to figure out which of those sites you needed to put your finger on and somehow um, change the result in just the way necessary to make Trump win. And whenever I make these arguments, people continue to spin out more and more extreme scenarios, which essentially end with, and then Trump declares a coup. Well, I can't have a political discussion about, and then Trump declares a coup. He's not going to. And look, if he does, that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the story. Anytime you say what Trump will do, I urge you to complete that thought by saying, and then the people will do this, and then the lawyers will do this, and then Congress will do this. The story doesn't end simply by saying Trump will do something. That's just doomsaying. The more that we amplify that, and the more that we reaffirm what Trump is doing, the more we normalize it. So let's all take a deep breath and recognize that we have agency, that we have the power, that the story doesn't end by simply saying what Trump says he's going to do. It ends when we say what we're going to do. Um, okay. A couple of things. People are asking a lot of questions about how do we unwind the tariffs? And many commentators actually this morning are criticizing the court for not explaining how to unwind the tariffs. First of all, it's not the Supreme Court's job to tell the administration how to fix its errors. And secondly, the administration unlawfully seized money from American corporations. It should give it back. Will that be hard? Probably. Will it be a big mess? You betcha. Might the administration have to pay damages? I hope so. But that's on the administration. It's not on the justices to tell the administration how to undo the mess that they created. In fact, it would be extraordinary for the Supreme Court to tell the administration how to govern. It's not the Supreme Court's job. What the Supreme Court said is what you did was illegal. Stop it, and that's the end of it. Um, so a lot of questions, additional questions about the Epstein files and why we're not seeing more progress, specifically prosecutions, why Congress isn't being more effective in obtaining additional evidence, in questioning the perpetrators. I understand the frustration over the difficult path forward on the Epstein files, but again, we are winning. 3 months ago, the Epstein Files Transparency Act had not been signed, and then it was signed because of the bravery of a couple of legislators and because of the persistence of the victims, and now we're in an entirely different world, and it is toppling people, and I think we're just beginning to see the cascading consequences of what's happening. I mean, there was the woman from Latham and Watkins who went on to become general counsel, I think, at Goldman Sachs. There are more and more revelations coming out about her role in advising and facilitating Jeffrey Epstein as a friend rather than as a client. Um, Les Wexner, is done. He's been done for quite some time. I think there is, a retrenchment, a backlash against the mostly powerful men who have taken advantage of this, and it is taking time to build. I guarantee you that it will continue to build, and that developments over in Europe will have a beneficial impact in the United States. So we have made huge progress. We just need to keep it up. And thank you to Ro Khanna and Representative Massey and the victims and their lawyers for keeping up this fight. A lot of people have asked, not a lot, several asked about a decision by the Gallup organization to stop tracking presidential favorability. And I think I mentioned, maybe I was too curt last week. Someone asked me if I thought that Gallup had capitulated to Trump, and my complete response was yes. So let me expand on that. Gallup has been polling presidential favorability, I think, since FDR. Order of magnitude, that's right. And that data set has incredible value, both as a historical metric and as a commercial product that it can sell. Indeed, in many ways, it defines the Gallup organization. And so the Gallup organization now wants us to believe that, just, for kicks and, whatever giggles, we're going to cancel our franchise in measuring presidential popularity. It's just not believable. And what it is another major organization that is capitulating to Trump. Just like CBS, just like Paramount and Disney and major universities and major law firms. They just don't have the strength of their convictions. And it is a shame that we find ourselves in the place that we find ourselves. And so that we could focus on that and feel very badly about that. But the flip side of that is that the people have met the moment. They have risen together and are seizing control of the political narrative. So, in the end, again, it comes down to us. That may not be a completely satisfactory answer to everyone. I mean, we can condemn Gallup, we can write them letters, we can stop consuming their products, but they've capitulated. And we're not as stupid as they apparently think we are. um, in that we would buy their, "Oh, we just thought we would focus on issues." That's ludicrous. That was their franchise, and they've given it up. Um, okay. Other questions? Here's a very good question. Can you help us with an overview about the primaries and how we should approach them in terms of supporting Democrats? That is a great question because if you are like me, your inbox and your text inbox on your phone are just being overwhelmed with requests for people. So here's what I suggest. Um, we collectively need to do everything. We need to support candidates in strategic races that could flip a seat. And there are organizations out there like Swing Left and um, I'm now going to go blank on them, Sister District, and others that are focused strategically on seats that we must win, and we should support them because they've thought long and hard about what are the most important seats. But we have to support our local candidates, even if we live in deeply red areas. Many congressional seats go uncontested by Democrats, and what that does is that depresses the Democratic vote for people up ballot. So we have to give Democrats a reason to show up at the polls, and that includes giving them a Democratic candidate to vote for in a district that we are likely going to lose. But if we don't have a candidate on the ballot, then what message are we sending to Democrats in that district? I'll tell you, the message is you don't matter to us because we're not going to bother to run a candidate to represent you, even if that candidate is going to lose. So as we focus on the strategic races, which we must do through organizations that are thinking long and hard about those strategic races, we also have to support our local candidates up and down the ballot to give people a chance to show up. And as I said, you don't have to do all of that yourself. We can trust that collectively we will we will do that. So that's my reaction there. Um, okay. Still just a few more questions. I've got about 5 minutes. The Board of Peace. Someone wants to know about Trump's promise that the U.S. will pay $7 billion or $10 billion to the Board of Peace, which has already collected an equal amount of money. And sort of the import of the question is, what gives? Who is this a legitimate organization? Does it have any restrictions on what it will do with the money? What do I think about it? Um, so far as I can tell, the Board of Peace is a way for Donald Trump to collect money that he controls, and that just seems to be a bad idea. It will likely be used as seed money so that developers can go in and get subsidies, effectively subsidies for rebuilding Gaza. Now, rebuilding Gaza after what happened in Gaza is something that should be done. Um, but it should be done under the auspices of a international organization that has the interests of the Gazans and Israel and Palestinians at stake, rather than real estate developers whose only concern is for their profitability. Because if that is the governing rule, the people of Gaza uh, will will end up losing. So, I, you know, w- the situation is horrific, and it needs to be addressed by an international organization. And I think that the Trump family can turn any tragedy into a profit opportunity, and I think that is what they're doing. Let me just get one more question and then we will wrap it up for this week and let you go on your way. So we have slightly fewer people than we do on a Saturday live stream. So I don't know quite what to say about that. I'll think about this. Okay. People are saying Fridays are not good due to work, which is why I was doing it on Saturday before. Um, so there are a couple of questions here about how we can be effective personally in helping to change the political outcome here. One reader says, I'm 73 and I wonder if I'll be alive to see the arc of justice to hold any of these monsters accountable. Even if we take back the House and the Senate, it'll be another 2 years or 3 years before we can regain the presidency. That's true. And then other people are asking, what can we do to convince young people and MAGA voters to join us? And I will come back to my now favorite story, which is a sermon by an Irish pastor in our last parish before we got kicked out / left that parish. Um, not by the Irish pastor. What he said is preach the gospel at all times, use words only if necessary. And what that means is the most effective way to convince people is by example. And boy, are we doing it. Um, by standing on the roadside, we're that's the most powerful message that we can give to people by being on overpasses, by sending postcards. We are showing people what democracy looks like. I am hearing more and more stories about people who are at standouts by the side of the road who tell me that drivers going by stop their cars, get out, and join them. And that's one person that has been converted, and that person is never going back because they decided in the moment that they were going to be like you. Um, I was in a Zoom earlier this week with Elders in Action, and someone was asking specifically about how to convince grandchildren to participate. And the only thing I can say is show them by your actions that it is important enough for you to get up and go out and stand in 10-degree weather with a sign for a couple of hours. That will make an impression on them. And that's what we're doing. And that's why March 28th, the next No Kings presentation, is incredibly important. And a reader made a suggestion today uh, by an email, and he said that he's participated in each of the former or the prior No King's Day demonstrations. And what he said is he's made a personal commitment to participate on March 28th and to get 5 other people to join him who have never protested before. Now, that is a very heavy lift. 5 people, God bless you. If you can do that, you are a hero of democracy. If each of us could get one person to join us at the next No King's Day presentation, it would be 12 million people or 15 million people or 20 million people. So set that as a personal goal. Convert one person, bring one person out with you who hasn't done so before. And don't be overbearing, don't force someone who doesn't want to go, but be the example, be the change that you want them to be. So let's set March 28th as a marker for us to go out and to bring one more person to the fight. If we can do that on March 28th, and then we do it again for the next one, we will soon have 30 million people or 50 million people out there in the streets before the midterms, protecting our midterms, telling Trump, don't you dare, because this is what it looks like when you make the people angry. We will take to the streets in numbers too big to ignore. I think that's Helen Reddy. And we will reclaim our democracy peacefully, but powerfully. So let's do that. So keep up the good work, everyone. We're doing a tremendous job. We're winning. It's hard to see through the noise, through the constant negativity of the media, but we are winning. And this morning's Supreme Court decision just confirms that our year-long resistance is paying off. So congratulations and thank you for everything you're doing. So that's it. I will talk with you tomorrow.